Okay.
So, so I think in the situation we're in right now, where a lot of people feel like their life is out of control because of circumstances that aren't in their control in their environment,
Right.
um, it can be very empowering to feel like you can do something to help yourself.
Right.
And the more empowered you are, the better you feel in general. It helps with depression, anxiety, just your general stress level. So, I was thinking about, some things maybe that people can do to feel like they have some control over their life, in that they're doing things that are good for them and that are helping them, their immune system, helping them feel good because they're eating better, not kind of going to that, I'm going to go to the vacation mode, the comfort mode of, because I'm stuck here at home, I'm just going to curl up in my little ball
Yeah.
and kind of and nurture myself that way, when there's other ways to nurture yourself that can be much more empowering, can really help to facilitate your immune system, your stress level.
Come out of this, be able to come out of this actually in a plus note and actually feeling better, because we have the opportunity to do some things that maybe we wouldn't have done being with our busy schedule. So, and some schedules are busier in some sense, but at least we're home. We're in a controlled environment.
Right.
So being able to take time to do some of the things that maybe you wouldn't have, like that.
Yeah, and I do hear from a lot of people that their life is more stressful because of the circumstances, but they're reaching out to people, they're forming bonds that they don't normally form in our busy society, and they really, that's great, whether it's with family, friends, or whoever. So there are different ways you can use this to your advantage.
Okay. Well, so let's talk about some of the thoughts and some of the things that you're telling your patients, and I can share.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think that a lot starts with the gastrointestinal tract, because 80% of your immune system is in your gastrointestinal tract. That's where we store a lot of our stress, butterflies in the stomach, or, getting stomach cramps, or, cramps in your intestines when you're stressed, or even that kind of that posture when you're stressed, where you kind of get that defensive curled in posture, which affects your GI tract. So, I was thinking maybe, some different ways you can really enhance your gastrointestinal environment, and that enhances your immune system, helps with your stress level. And again, feeling like you're doing something for yourself, to empower yourself.
Great. So similar messages. So what are you offering for some tools?
Well, I think one tool is, if you have to watch the news, limit it to about 20 minutes a day.
Yes.
You go to bed.
Right. Not before you go to bed.
Not before you go to bed. And, with partners and friends, if you have to talk about it to some degree, limit it to how long you can talk about it, and then talk about something else.
Yeah. And I've been actually saying, if you are going to talk about it, so what are some of the benefits that are coming out of this? Ending on a positive note.
That's perfect. Yeah. So talk about it in a positive way, as opposed to kind of a negative, stressful way. Right. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. And, I also think that people get caught up, they turn on the news and then they can't turn it off.
Right. Yes.
So it's, you have to, you plan something. So I'm going to watch this for 20 minutes. And in 20 minutes, I have a plan of what I'm going to do. Even if it's get up and walk around your house.
Right.
Just to separate from the television, turn it off and separate. Throw a load of laundry in. Just have something planned, so you don't kind of get sucked into it and then say, oh, just a few more minutes, just
That's
a few more.
Great idea, because that's the channel surfing that happens with people in general at the end of a work day. They'll eat dinner and sit down in front of the couch, sit down on the couch in front of the TV, and when they don't find something they're interested in, they just keep surfing. But if you have a plan like that, which is a great idea, you have a plan like that, then you do, okay, I'm going to get this information and then I'm going to move on.
Right. Right. Yeah. And then of course, what you eat is so important. So instead of going for the high carb food, going for the sugars because it's, kind of a vacation type mode.
Right.
Um, Make sure you have your refrigerator fully stocked and have things prepared so that, because it's much easier to grab that bag of potato chips, pretzels, cookies, whatever, particularly if you don't have something prepared that's healthy for you. So cut up some vegetables, have some hummus, have something already prepared in your refrigerator so that you don't have to think, well, first I need to eat something healthy, but I have to prepare it and I really don't want to do that.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yes.
So those are good. Those are really good things, and sounds very familiar. Those are a lot of what the messages we're giving as well too, because they're, habits and vacation mode. Sometimes people let down their hair, so to speak, and on vacation mode go really into more alcohol, more junk food, really not paying attention. So that's a great idea, is to, really make that conscious plan to have, not just if you're going to turn on the news, but just have a plan for the day. And, take some time to do some prep on your food and have good food choices. And frankly, I always say, if you don't want to eat it, don't have it in your cupboard.
Well, that's true. Don't buy it. Yeah, don't buy it. That's very true.
Right. So, so what else are you, because we were talking about the gut.
Yes. So, and for, just stress, there's different ways to kind of manage stress a little bit, whether it's find something. There's so many ways now you can volunteer your time without leaving your home. And when you're doing something for somebody else, it really does help your mood. It helps your stress level. You feel better about yourself, kind of takes you out of yourself. So, so trying to find something you can volunteer, from home, or
reaching out to the person. Like, there's so many people who are really going into depression and, and fear and sadness, maybe even just reaching out to someone like that and just giving them either the space to talk about it, and also to help them to change how, their thought process by talking about some vacation or a place that they enjoy, or something that takes them out of it, is a huge contribution for people too.
Yes. And you had mentioned the fact, not, a few days ago when we were talking about how long it takes to make something a habit.
Right.
And that goes two ways. What kind of habits do you want to start? Because, when you're on vacation, it's a week, it's a week and a half, it's 2 weeks. But this is not a week and a half. This is not 2 weeks. It's a long enough time period to start a habit.
Right.
And a pattern. And so, you really want to avoid doing that, starting those patterns, those habits.
Right. Especially if they're based in fear and based in, the feeling that, because I've really noticed that, like you're saying, like 1 week is one thing, 2 weeks is another thing. But when it starts getting longer and longer, I'm really seeing people's energy go down. And so even if I do watch, like, the weather, I noticed that one of the guys that I watched for the weather is working from home. It seems like his energy level is just dropping and dropping. You can see it on his face. And, like, he's usually really upbeat and outgoing, and he's got this, like, he's not smiling, and you can see more almost even just despondent. So it's interesting what happens over that period of time. And I think that you're right about the bad habits that can get formed in our nervous system as repetitive. And so it takes conscious effort, doesn't it?
It does. It does take a conscious effort, particularly, when we form habits like that, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a little bit at a time. And so, you don't realize it until you get to some place that's far along. You say, oh my gosh, but now I'm so far along, it's harder to break it.
Right.
Yeah.
So some things that are, like conscious choices, because what we were talking about is we kind of went into our neurotechy thing and started talking about, how on a nervous system level, on a cellular level, our cells learn something new. And when they learn something new, after a while, they just recreate themselves. And so if depression is one of the things, or anxiety is one of the things that's coming up, it's kind of that neuroplasticity that is a minus and a plus on that nervous system that has learned something new that's not really in our control anymore unless we make a conscious effort to change it. So in making a conscious effort to change that neuroplasticity to a positive, what are you letting people know? Like, what's the
well, I think one of the things is just to try to avoid going into that neuroplasticity as far as starting those neurological linkages that are kind of the unhealthy neurological linkages. So starting more from the beginning, and if you are kind of already at that point, so, find one thing a day to be thankful for.
Yes.
I'm thankful that my breakfast tasted so good. It doesn't have to be a huge thing. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be life-changing. But when you start seeing things in your life that you're thankful for, that changes those neurological linkages, that neuroplasticity to thankfulness instead of the woe is me or, yeah. So I think that's a really good tool.
Yeah. And, if I could, I actually have people write them down because sometimes it's hard to get started. So think of 10 things that you're grateful for. And like you said, they don't have to be life-changing. I love my dog, he's so cute. I could take a picture of the cute little, and just put it on that piece of paper, and having 10 things that just make me smile, even if it's just a memory, or thankful for something like your, a good tasting breakfast, things like that, especially if you're a foodie, right? So, and so if we can write them down, sometimes just pulling them out several times a day, hanging them up and moving them around, because we also acclimate on things that we try to put in front of us that are visual, and we don't see it after a very, very short period of time. So changing it and moving it around and rereading it and reading it in a different order, those to help start that process of learning something new.
And writing it down is a good idea. I agree. Because, the studies have shown that, writing something down for 15 times once a day imprints it in your neurological system, in your brain, in your cells. But I think that's a really good idea of writing it down. And, before you go to bed at night, write down what are the things you would like to see happen in your life. And again, it doesn't have to be big things. It can be little things about the next day, and before you go to bed at night, write those down, because when you write those down right before you go to bed, and then you have that imprinted and you sleep, and your neurological system processes that.
I'm a huge fan of that one. I've actually been doing that for years. I write it down in my notes on my phone, and before I go to sleep, I get in bed and I open the notes and I read the 10 things. And some of them are 5 years off, but I still read.
That's right. Doesn't matter. Yeah. So, so I think, changing the way you're kind of seeing things, perceiving things in the positive, as opposed to the more, the not as healthy way of seeing things.
Good. And of course, stress totally affects your gut and how your gut works and your immune system. Those negative emotions compromise your immune system for hours. And if it's constant, it's days.
It's very interesting, because I use some of the same technology that you use in your office for doing scans, and the biosurvey, which has now been approved by the FDA for SCAN, the only electrodermal feedback system that's been approved by the FDA as being accurate in scanning. I can have someone come into my office that eats a really good diet, doesn't smoke, their lifestyle other than stress seems to be pretty good. but yet their stress level is really high.
Right.
And someone else who may not eat as healthy, whose habits might not be as healthy, and I'm not advocating don't have healthy habits, but their stress level is very low. Their scan comes out better.
It's interesting, isn't it? I've definitely seen the same thing. I mean, over time, a poor diet and things like that compromise how much nutrition your brain actually gets, and ultimately
Right.
will be, like become more obsessive.
Right, sure.
Vitamin B's and minerals and things like that. But I
Right.
totally agree with you on those scans, is that if someone's stressing, it totally compromises their function.
Yes. Yes. And in the short term and the long term, but you're right, you know, healthy eating, poor eating will also have its effect. You have that whole vagus brain nerve connection that, you know, unhealthy eating will affect.
Right. Okay. Yeah, for sure. All right. So any other tips or tools as far as what people can do?
Well, let's see. So, you know, we talked about eating, we talked about like your perception of what's positive, negative, stressful, not stressful. Exercise.
Mhm.
Exercise increases your endorphins, increases your dopamine, you know, your feel good, euphoric hormones. It's also a really good stress release as well. So exercising, I think, is really important as well. And again, it doesn't have to be running 5 miles.
Right. No, but you know what I do have people do when they're exercising, because it's a really good time to do to be very in the moment. Consciousness awareness is to, focus on your breathing, focus on
Mm-hmm.
counting your breaths. If you
Mm-hmm.
do prayer, to do prayer. If you have a walk, like a walking meditation, I think is very, very valuable. Probably, if you're only going to pick one or the other, do your walking meditation and get both in, right?
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. Yeah, so things like yoga or walking while you're doing something audio is really good. And you know, I tell people, if you are someone that's working from home, you're sitting in front of a computer, you know, set a little alarm on your phone. Get up, you know, at least once an hour,
Right.
and you know, walk around your house. Do something that gets you moving. So, because, you know, that really helps stimulate the blood flow as well as
Right.
getting some exercise and those endorphins.
Yeah, and get outside. I mean, if you're not living in a state that will literally arrest you for being outside at this point,
Yeah.
outside. And
Yeah.
I live in Florida, and I'm so happy to have the beaches open.
Yeah. I bet you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then water.
Of course. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
flush those.
You're drinking your water.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have it by your side.
Right. So those are really helpful. I know at your office, what people are doing is people are being able to do one of the techniques that you do on the phone, which is
Correct.
which really helps to manage the immune system, manage stress. And it with the scan, it'll show you exactly where people are having challenges, where you can do your scan, do your treatment, and then send them a treatment in a scale or frequency so that they can continue to listen to that.
Correct. So the NMT is really the goal is to kind of find out what's challenging your body, whether it's some kind of allergy, whether it's some kind of pathogen, whether it's some kind of toxin, or on a more less tangible level, it's the way your body is processing stress, or it could be your beneficial flora, maybe your immune system and your beneficial flora isn't getting along so well, which again is huge for the gastrointestinal tract. But neurological functioning, there's many ways we can work with linkages and kind of helping to reestablish new linkages, neurological linkages, signaling for those patterns when you're trying to change those patterns. And yes, we can make you an MP3 file, and we have little antennas at our office that we mail to you, and we can email your MP3 file, and then you can use that MP3 file at home through your computer, smartphone, to kind of reinforce. It's kind of like listening to the instructions over and over again,
Right.
really having to listen to them, hear them.
Right. And so that little scalar antenna plays that at a frequency that your nervous system can utilize it.
Yeah, so scalar waves are interesting because the DNA of our cells are like little scalar antennas, and they pick up scalar waves and can utilize that information. Kind of, the example I use when I'm explaining it is, on a cell phone, when you're talking on a cell phone, your cell phone has the capacity, the technology to convert auditory information into microwaves, and then the auditory information is carried on the wave and is reconverted when it eventually through satellites gets to the person you're talking to, and their phone reconverts the information to auditory so it's understandable. Same concept, but it's the DNA of your cells that have that kind of ability to understand the information and utilize that information being carried on a scalar wave.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I know we use a lot of biophoton frequencies in our office, and we have that's how our cells communicate, is through biophoton.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's super, super fast, much faster than the nervous system. So
yes,
you can use those frequencies to transfer information into your cells. It's instant. It's just like goes through your entire body and hits every single cell. It's
speed of light.
The highway, baby. Yeah, that's right.
It is. It's the speed of light.
That's right. That's right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And so what we're doing is using that biophoton frequencies, because we can use that in the office whether you're there or not. And then also we're doing the advanced professional fast from NET, the neuroemotional technique, to really take the stress off the nervous system. Because as you well know, because we talk about this a lot too, is that the emotions are biochemical. And so, nothing has meaning to the meaning we give it, right? So the nervous system decides that anxiety is based on this negative thing that's going on for us. And so with the NET, you can actually change how the nervous system reacts to stressors that are just unfinished business. And, in this infinite, as we like to call it, limbic loop, because that emotional brain, the limbic system, just gets caught in this infinite loop. So I think we're all going to, if we all could use it now, but we're all going to need it by the time this is over because of that conditioned response.
Right. And it's so amazing how fast NET works. I mean, it's instantaneous. We talk about the speed of light. NET, although it's not the speed of light, I mean, by the time you're finished a session, it's like you have something lifted off your shoulders, some kind of weight lifted off your shoulders. And it's so funny because, people will, when you ask them on later visits, so how is that doing? What do you mean? They don't even remember, because their neurological signaling linkages have changed so much that it's a distant memory for them, whatever they were dealing with.
It is so amazing. It really
is. It is amazing.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I actually had a patient who had to drive to my office over a bridge, and she had a bridge phobia. She would do it, but it caused her a lot of stress. And I had treated her, and I didn't see her for 2 weeks. And 2 weeks later, she came into the office, and I said, "How are you doing?" She goes, "Fine." I go, "Well, how was your drive here?" "Fine." "Well, how was your drive over the bridge?" "Oh, so do you remember what NET we did last time?"
Exactly. Yes. So it's just an amazing, tool. And the quick hookup.
So I know you do in your office as well. And we did a video on how to do fast at home.
Good idea.
Yeah, I'll share that with you. It also has the link to be able to download the PDF for it. So it's a great home tool as well.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, so I think a lot of good information for people to take away and try to incorporate.
Agreed.